Hi, folks, and welcome to another podcast. Once again, we are in collaboration with our partners from Iron Shield. We discuss here topics that cannot be avoided, although most of the mainstream try to make sure that you don't pay attention to some of the things that happens in front of our eyes, and that's what they're here for, to make sure that we can be aware of our surroundings, put some thought in the direction that our civilization is heading, and why not maybe come up with a plan to solve before it's too late. So we believe there is a war going on, and not all wars are made of weapons. There are other ways to combat. So Marco will tell us in detail what kind of war are we facing, and hopefully we can come up with some strategies. To discuss this topic, we invited Garry Powell, who was here with us a few occasions, and we have maybe one or two guests joining us along the way. So if you are into this topic, stay around for the next 90 minutes. If you know someone who is into this sort of conversation, share. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you want to express your satisfaction, press that like button below. Marco, over to you.
Okay, so the road to perdition is paved with both good and bad intentions. Indeed, the power system in Europe exemplifies this maxim. It encourages and nurtures those who seek to undermine European civilization, while excoriating those who seek to preserve it. An increasing sense of frustration and unrest is emerging among the latter. Could this be a prelude to increasing civil strife, or in a worst-case scenario, to a civil war? This evening, we shall examine the interplay of actors and forces seeking to impose a new reality on a once naive and unsuspecting indigenous European populations. Craig, after this little introduction, I think we can dive straight into the topic matter. We're living in very strange times. The whole political, economic, and social scenario is undergoing great upheavals. Would you like to give us your overview and how you see things developing and unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, the overview really is that we have more or less unrestricted immigration into Europe at the moment, and have done for the last 20 or so years, essentially, and the results are disastrous, as anyone can see. You know, the only parts of Europe which are really managing to maintain their identity, let's say, and a somewhat traditional way of life are those countries of Central Europe, really. Poland and Slovakia and Hungary are doing a fairly good job of limiting immigration, and, you know, I mean, they do have immigration, but they keep it to very, very limited numbers, and they only select people that they really want, people who can actually contribute to something to the society, which seems a good idea to me. You've probably heard about this talk by David Betts, which has gone viral. David Betts is a professor of war studies at King's College London, for anyone who doesn't know, and he's he's actually predicted civil war in Britain in the next few years, I think it's becoming extremely likely. And the thing I would like to really underline is that it's very easy to cast all the blame at the immigrants, but the immigrants, you can understand why they're coming. If I were growing up in Somalia or somewhere like that, I might prefer to live in England or Germany too. You can't really blame them. I think the people we can really blame are our own elites who it's hard to know, as you say, whether their intentions are good or bad. In some cases, I think they're good. So, some of these people actually believe in some sort of globalist utopia, in spite of all the evidence that it's not happening. I think some of them are pretty much straight up neo-Marxists who actually want to destroy Europe as we know it.
The class war has failed, so they have to transpose this in a certain way onto a race war. Now they see things in terms of a race war. And I think we should be looking at these people because, as you properly mention, one simply can't blame the immigrants for wanting a better life. Although it's not just about wanting a better life. I think there is active agency that wants to cause an upheaval in the demographics of Europe. That I think we have that element as well. But certainly you're right in the sense that one can't blame people who want a better life from trying to come into Europe. On the other hand, you do have people with an agenda. And we can see that the identities of European countries are, in a way, being deliberately dissolved. There is conscious purpose here, which is trying to dissolve a sense of national identity, and at the same time demoralizing people. I think when one loses a sense of identity, it finds it very difficult to navigate reality. And people hitherto have navigated reality on the base of some very solid sense of identity, which was included the family, the community, and the nation state.
Yes, I agree entirely. Yeah.
I think our other guest, just for the audience, we have Dove trying to join. He's having some technical issues. Just if you see someone coming in, coming out. I just want to throw something to the discussion. I try to understand why we go through this journey. And I think we have been sold this whole concept, which is absolutely nonsense, of white guilt. It seems that we need to pay for being in charge of the party, enjoying ourselves for a long time, and now it's like our turn to serve. But I don't know how people can buy this narrative. Is it like a result of a brainwashing program?
Well, it is, yes. I mean, I used to be a professor in a university, so I know that that's going on, and that is the only narrative that's allowed at most universities. That there's an occasional dissident professor. You've probably heard of some of them, like Nigel Biggar, for example, at Cambridge, or there's another one. There are a couple at Cambridge, actually. David, what's his name? I've forgotten his name. I mean, there's an occasional one, and some of the famous ones manage to keep their jobs, although they don't agree with that. But yeah, there's a lot of brainwashing going on. Lots of professors are activists now, and it got sort of fanatically left wing about roughly 10 years ago, to 15 years ago. I mean, when I started teaching in an American university in 2004, okay, most of my colleagues were leftists, but they were not fanatical leftists. You know, they were left of center, but they were not real Marxists. And it was still possible. I mean, I was a leftist myself at that time, but I knew people who were not leftists. But by sometime between about 2010 and 2015, it basically became impossible to have any dissident point of view. You know, you started to be excluded. You know, initially in you know, just socially, but latterly with all the machinery of cancel culture. You know, you wouldn't be promoted. There would be pressure on you to leave the university and so on. So yeah, there's a lot of brainwashing going on.
Indeed. We've just been joined by Dov Maimon. Welcome, Dov. Thankfully, you've managed to get your connection sorted out. How are you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm in Jerusalem now. I didn't hear so much what has been said, so maybe
indeed
you may mind that I will repeat over things that have been said. Maybe you can just tell me more.
Indeed. Yes, certainly. Well, I prefaced it by the with the introduction. I said the road to perdition is paved with both good and bad intentions. Okay, and the power system in Europe exemplifies this maxim. It encourages and nurtures those who seek to undermine European civilization and excoriates those who seek to preserve it. An increasing sense of frustration and unrest is emerging among the latter, and we were wondering whether this could be a prelude to increasing civil strife, which we see happening in France, in Great Britain, in Belgium, and in other European countries, most recently in Ireland too. And we think that it may well not stop at civil strife, but end up in a civil war scenario. Okay, and we want to examine the interplay of forces and actors which are seeking to impose this new reality, a new reality which is dissolving national identities and which is disengaging from any sense of a Judeo-Christian civilization and facilitating the entry into Europe of hostile actors, which are slowly but surely taking over the many metropolitan centers. But we also pointed out that recently there has been some kind of awakening. The indigenous populations of Europe are a little less naive than they once were. To a great extent, this is due to alternative media, because people such as you and I and Craig and Vitor, we are engaging in this type of debate, and we're bringing information which other people wouldn't otherwise get. And we're also asking questions. Okay, something is going on in Europe now, which is very strange. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It's been happening for a very long time now. I think we can speak in terms of decades, but it's reaching a crisis point now where we seem to be reaching critical mass with these huge waves of immigrants from hostile countries arriving, but have been facilitated by European intelligentsia, academia, the judiciary, government policy, and the media. We'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, I think you have said most of the things, and I suppose that the honorable other speakers have said the same. I will give you, I think everything, we are in a kind of pendulum. I mean, some people go first, you know, they want to be free and they want to go over the structure. And then we may be in a backlash. As you say, thanks to what happened historically. Because of globalization, economic globalization and cultural globalization, we have this economic globalization has made, it has very good things, globalization, economic globalization, but it also dark side, because when you have a globalization, that means that you are losing jobs in European countries, and then we have a bigger social gap. And when we have a social gap, which is very big, we have a lot of people who are left behind of the globalization. And when I speak of France, because I'm publishing a book now about France, about the Jews in France, but the Jews only are a part of a metaphor of something much bigger, which are, so what we see, because when we have a democracy, we need to have a big middle class, and when we have a downgrading of a middle class, and we have today in France something like 70% of a population who feel left behind and not being part of the middle class, and so what happened? We have two kind of people. One part is the people in the neighbor in the deep France, in the French people from the native, what you call indigenous population, we are more going for, they want to go back to traditional values, especially some kind of Christianity and maybe Judaism, but especially Christianity, and they want to go back to family and conservative values. In some way, they want to have order. And we have on the other side also something like 20 to 30% of the population who are migrants, who people want to make, a lot of them want to have another country, another kind of France, which is not at all the same, which people coming with a migration background and a lot of Islam background. So, the core France that we have known is not so strong today. When we don't have a strong middle class, we are lost. And so, but at some point, as you say, there is a risk of civil war, and we hope it will not happen for sure. Especially as a rabbi and as a Jew, I'm very afraid of that, because the Jew will be powerless, and they may be sacrificed, either if we go for Islamization or submission to Islam, or even if we go to Reconquista, what happened in Spain in 1492, and when the Jews have been expulsed from Spain, like the Muslims have been, they wanted to go back to the identity. When they want to go back to identity, there is no room for Jews and not for foreigners. So it will be very bad. The two scenarios are very bad, and we have to fight that, and we have to think very creatively how to make it back. But the globalization has a very good aspect, but it also has been a destruction of the local culture, and it's and so we have to be very aware how to change the things today.
Excuse me, Dov, because it's interesting that you raised the question of the Jewish population in France. I'm not sure that we're in a scenario where history is going to exactly repeat itself, such as the period of the expulsion in 1492. I think the reality is different, because I think in general, European population understand that the Jews have always found a way of weaving themselves into the fabric of society without compromising it. Of course, we have our extremists, we've had a share of communists as well, but generally speaking, the Jewish population has tended to strengthen national identity, even to a fault. They become more patriotic than the red-blooded Englishman or red-blooded Frenchman, to the point of actually making fools of themselves at times, I may add. Okay, but so I think there is a difference in the type of, for example, if we look at the example of the Jewish Pied Noir that came from North Africa, we have to say that there is a qualitative difference. These people are very patriotic Frenchmen, at least they perceive themselves as such, and they weave themselves into the fabric of French society. I don't think this is the case with, unfortunately, and we have to generalize to a great extent, with the Muslim community. And we may well say that the majority of Muslim people are law-abiding, decent people. The majority, we can even say that. for the sake of argument, that the majority of Muslims are moderate, this, that, and the other. The only problem is that the extremists nestle comfortably within this moderate majority. They're not isolated by this moderate majority. I just wanted to raise this point with you.
Yeah, okay. So as you say, 28% of a Muslim are really radicalized in France. I want to speak France, but you probably look at the same thing in Britain and in Germany and in Belgium. But 28%. But when we look at the young generation, under 25, there are 55% who are radicalized. They don't like the West. They hate the West. They want, they have absorbed the decolonial thinking, and they hate the West, and they want to have Sharia. So 55% of the young people, that's the number of Fondapol and IFOP and many, and Institut Montaigne, that's the number that come back and again. And the more they're educated, the more they're engaged in society, the more they're more proud of their Islamic roots. And this is not a very good solution. It's look like it's not. We have a culture camp, a culture camp between the people, and we have to be very careful about that. Regarding the Jews, you're right. They are absolutely supporting the state. They are not a problem for the society, but the politicians play the numbers. They play the numbers. We know that everywhere. And so what you want to do, let's imagine that you have what we call radical right, far right, going up to power in France. Let's imagine this situation in 2027 with Jordan Bardella, for example. He has to make a deal with 30% of the population who are Muslim, and a big part of them were ready to make riots and to make a big problem with them. So it's not easy, but you can change. You can change the thing. Demography is the key point. We can run away from demography. So we have to think how to make it. But that's the reason we are afraid about. I'm speaking also like someone who is pretty involved with the government of Israel. We are pretty afraid of even pogroms or even violence against the Jews, which could be something very bad for the Jews. But let's think about all Europe. Jews are only a small part of the story. The problem of Europe is that Europe have no way. They have to decide what they want to be. And as you say, there are alternative media today. And people start learning what is happening. They cannot play the game of just not knowing and just going on and on, increase immigration, increase violence, and to say there is no violence and denial. So today there is something which is at the level that people understand that, and we see new media everywhere in Europe. When people start speaking about the problem, and they think we may get to a solution, we may get a situation when people will speak clearly, and when people speak clearly, there is more chance to set up a new kind of Europe, which is a bit different, maybe that Europe has values, very strong values, and they will decide we want to be what we are, and they need first to know what we want to achieve. This is the key issue. If you don't know who you are, you cannot go there. First, you have to know where you want to go. So what I invite my dear colleagues here to guest speakers is, where do you like to be? What will be the scenario? What will be the optimistic scenario that you expect for Europe?
Vitor?
Yeah, I want to ask one thing, since we are talking about France. So in French, there is this funny term called Islamo-gauchism, which stands in English for Islam leftism. It's kind of an interesting one. It's even hard to translate in other language. I know the French language is very, very rich. But no wonder, even your circumstance, that you came up with these concepts. I would like to give us some insights among this promiscuous relationship between the progressives and a crowd that is not progressive at all, which is the Muslim crowd, and they seem to get along pretty well. How can that happen?
Dov,
Can you hear it?
Dov, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. So regarding the strange alliance between left and Islam, the progressive and Islam, as you say, it's a very strange alliance. But if we want to understand, so normally when you are LGBT, you don't like so much, Islam is not so much the best place for you. Islam, radical Islam doesn't accept LGBT. When you are radical Islam, don't accept feminism. So normally they cannot go together. But because they import the same dualistic vision of the world, they go together. And so at some point it will not work, like it did not work in Iran, like it did not work in any Islamic country. But at this moment, these people hate so much the West. They hate themselves. It's a kind of self-hatred. They hate the West, they hate themselves, they feel guilt about colonialism. So we have a problem of identity, and we have to help the young people to just to be clear about what we want to achieve, what kind of society we want to achieve. This is what I believe is a key issue to achieve.
I think a very important element is the sense of identity. A sense of identity has been dissolved, and we can speak about the sense of identity with regard to belonging to a family's sexual identity, the concept of a nation state, which inhibits the notion of a general project, of a general societal project. And I think this is the huge danger. This is the huge danger. I think we can speak about sociologists of the past. We can talk about Durkheim. I think, in a sense, they identified the start of this problem, its nascent phase. So I think perhaps one of the remedies is a restoration of a positive identity. Craig, your thoughts?
Well, yes, I agree completely. The problem, obviously, is that that's very difficult when almost the entire establishment is against that. What we need is we need an objective teaching of history, for example, which would include teaching not just the bad things which Europeans have done, which admittedly we did do some bad things, but teaching the glories of Western civilization as well. And I think this is controversial, but I think that Western identity is indissolubly linked to Christianity and Judaism. And I think that the fact that by and large Europe has become an atheistic...
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Has become an atheistic continent is extremely problematic. The fact that most people don't have any sense of the transcendent at all, that they don't understand that there's anything beyond the material and pleasure, makes them very vulnerable to these very superficial and in my view foolish ideologies like classical Marxism and neo-Marxism. So to answer Dov's question, I think that we do need to reinstate traditional values, but how we do that when the great majority of educated people, I mean, almost all the people I know would be very much against that.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that. Today I was reading actually that church attendance was actually increasing in Europe again. I just read a report today that it was increasing. Now, coming back to religion, because I think that's a central aspect of European identity. And I recall that when people were speaking about drafting a European constitution, they discarded the idea of Judeo-Christianity being mentioned in a European constitution years ago. And also a famous Italian philosopher, a practicing Christian, Rocco Buttiglione, was also disqualified from becoming, I think, the European Commissioner, if I remember correctly. Now, I think, and this is very much the work of the European Union, because it may seem a paradox, but the European Union seems to be the most anti-European institution imaginable, because Europe is inconceivable without an understanding of it as being a mosaic of nation states and indeed regional realities.
Yeah.
Dov, Craig,
Yeah.
any?
Listen, yeah. Listen, so the question we have, I believe we have, as I said, a pendulum. Pendulum, that means after Second World War, people are so afraid of nationalism. So they wanted to get rid of any collective identity. So either ethnic, religious, and national identity. They want to go to individuals. But when you go to individuals, you lose how you can, if everyone is absolutely individualistic, you have no common ground to go together. You need to have if you don't know where to go, you have no chance to go there. So the first thing to do, and I speak from Israel, so in Israel it's very clear. We know where we want to go. We have no choice. We try to be open to the world, to be citizen of the world, but when we face Hamas, when we say people Hezbollah, when we feed people who don't want you, whatever you want, they don't accept you. You have no way to go back to your own identity. And since the October 7, 2023, in Israel, we have seen a backlash to religion, to identity, to national identity. And so it's maybe happen the same thing in Europe. At some point, people will understand that there is no way. I mean, you can be, what happened with French and Italian and Britain and German was one way, one thing. With radical Islam, it doesn't work. So at some point will be a fight, a cultural fight. And during this fight, we have no way people, we go back to identity, we go back to the church, we go back to identity. And it will be national identity, ethnic identity, and cultural identity. But we have to be aware, but we have also to accept the otherness, not to go back fully to the xenophobia. So this is what we have to be aware. I mean, I believe if we think of kind of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, at some point we go back to a better situation today. So after the Second War, people will go to John Lennon, imagine there are no heaven, imagine there are no nation, no religion too, and so on. They wanted to be free and free, sexual freeness, freedom, and so on. But at some point, there is no content to that. So I believe that people cannot live without content. So I believe you mentioned Durkheim and you mentioned other thinkers. People need identity, collective identity. If you don't have collective dream, you cannot go there. You need to know where you want to go. I think what we have to work as people of faith, people of leaders, political, ideological, religious leaders, is to bring the people to question what we want to achieve and question that. And people don't want to question. But if you don't question, you will never get there. And then we have to build a new consensus, a new way of what are the values that we want to achieve, what are the red lines that you don't want to go there, what you cannot accept, what kind of thing you cannot accept. And this should be a national debate. I believe that we can have such a debate and to provoke such a debate, which is very important. And then we know where we want to go, what's the ethos, the new ethos. The old ethos has been completely ripped away. If you look at the war in Ukraine, I just published a book about the war in Ukraine. What happened? Europe find itself with a very bad situation in military, very bad situation in technology, and very bad situation in energy. Why? Because they believe that we have to be nice. If you are nice to the people, people will be nice to you. But they didn't understand it was because of America was protecting against Russia. So we have to, again, to have war and to be ready for war, to be ready to die and ready to fight and to have military force. If you don't have all that, you are very weak. And so I'm sorry, I would like to have a world of really being nice and to be friendly to everybody. But I think the only way, if we want to protect the values of Europe, is to have a strong military force and to have a strong ability to decide where we want to go. And this is the world of intellectuals and religious people to work on, to bring the people to make a general debate. People, where we want to be in 20 years from now? What kind of Europe you want to build here? You want to have a creolization? You want to have a civil war? You want to have a kind of archipelago, something like island that nobody speaks to nobody and a lot of violence. You cannot go there. You cannot allow to go there. So we have to think again where we want to go and how you make it. And we have so many politicians who are just myopia. It's just they have very short view. They think about 2 years, 5 years. They don't go for where you want to be in 20 years from now. What kind of Europe you want to build? And these people don't have children. They don't think about the future. If you want to think about the future, and you understand people need identity, and I agree with both of you or three of you when you say identity is the key issue, and we have to think together. I think we have a lot of experience in that. We have a lot of Europe is a long continent, it's a long time continent, and I have no doubt that at the end of the day, Europe will find its way and will not accept to be changed to be a barbarism. It will not be barbarism. It will be a period of barbarism, but afterward it will go back to be educated and cultural cultural continent as it has always been.
Indeed,
Just
Vitor.
to stay just to stay in that positive note. I don't know if you guys are aware of not, but there are some good news coming from Britain. I just saw that the UK Supreme Court approved a law where the gender is now assigned at birth, so that we are back to woman and man. I just saw on Niall Boylan's ex, who is so Niall Boylan is a very famous journalist here who combat the main narrative, and I think that's something to celebrate, that the establishment is now in our favor, at least for a day, and maybe that's just the beginning of a new of a new direction. I think I don't know how much of that is a Trump effect, because in my perception, like, Trump got a lot of things right, but also a few things not that right, mostly on the economical side of the house. But when it comes to the culture war, Trump for sure is having his repercussions across the Atlantic. And I think this is a good example. So, of course, it's not just merit of Trump; it's also merit of the British citizens. So I think we should applaud what the UK Supreme Court just made it law today. So I don't know, Garry, if this is something you are following or not.
Yes, I read it too, and I think that I'm not a fan of the British Supreme Court, actually, generally speaking, at all. I think they've abrogated, they've done a lot to abrogate our traditional rights, but I think they're feeling the pressure, actually. I think they're aware that if they had ruled the other way, that gender was a social construct, there would have been a massive outcry, because I think certainly the majority of British people feel that. So I don't even like the word gender. I'm a linguist, and to me, gender is a term in linguistics. To me, it's not. It's biological sex. That's what we're given at birth, and this is not something that's socially determined. So yeah, I mean that's a good thing. And we've talked about immigration, but of course this whole panoply of LGBTQ rights, and especially this whole trans narrative, which has been pushed so much by the academic elites, as a way, in my view, basically to destroy the family. I think this is what it's been used for, to make they want young people to be confused. They don't want young people to think about forming families necessarily, and so it's been weaponized. There's no question that it's been very much weaponized against society, which is based on the family.
But Garry, what is the motivation of the elites? What do they do that? What do oppose family? I agree with you, but all the LGBT, it's not a matter of who you are in your room. It's a matter of public thing to destroy the family and to destroy the regular, what we call the paternal family that we know. But why do they do that? What do they gain from that? To destroy the family?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. It's a difficult one to answer. You know, I think what they're trying to bring about is a globalist society run by bureaucrats. In other words, run by themselves. And I think what they gain is, if we don't have families, and we don't have communities, and we don't have nations, and we don't have religions, then we are all dependent upon these sort of globalist organizations like the EU, WEF, WHO, and all of, we're dependent on the experts. Then the experts make all the decisions for us, and their position is cemented really as the elite of elites. So you know, I think that what's happened over the last 100 years is that we've moved from having a traditional aristocracy based on birth to a new aristocracy which is based on education. And in this new aristocracy, it's really a condition of belonging, really, is that you have these progressive values, you know. And I this is something I feel I know about, because as I lost those values, I was pushed out, you know, and I became an enemy to a lot of people. So I you know, it was made fairly apparent, actually. So yeah, I think it's that. I think that's how they maintain their control and power and wealth and prestige. I think, you know, a few of them genuinely believe in all this stuff. I don't know how many. You do get some who genuinely believe it. You know, the brainwashed ones. I think a lot of them are just simply use it as a it's a kind of quasi-religious orthodoxy, isn't it? This has taken the place of a religion in their minds. They cannot tolerate any criticism of these are really dogmas. I mean, you can't criticize any of these beliefs at all without fear of expulsion from the group.
So you don't buy that Europe is committing a suicide?
Oh, I do think we're committing suicide, but I don't think it's a suicide that's been committed by all Europeans. I think that the majority of ordinary Europeans are very much against it. And it's, you know, one of the astonishing things to me is that ordinary working people seem to be much more how can I put it, much more sensible and wise than the highly educated on the whole. Like if I talk to a carpenter or a mechanic or an electrician or something, I know I'm likely to have a far more intelligent conversation than when I speak to a professor with a PhD from one of the top American universities. Generally speaking, I mean, they're the ones that are pushing the suicide. I don't think it's the and you know, perhaps your question is asking whether there's a logical contradiction there. I mean, I think they're trying to bring about the end of traditional Europe, but they don't literally want the extinction of Europe. I mean, they want a completely different Europe. They want a transnational Europe, a trans-religious Europe, a transsexual Europe, a trans-family Europe that's like I said, that's basically run by experts, run by quangos and this ever increasing civil service.
A fluid identity in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
Which would, of course, entail the loss of freedom as we understand it, because freedom as we understand it requires a contraction in a sense. We have to limit ourselves. When we limit ourselves as moral agents, we define ourselves, and that ultimately gives us a sense of freedom. I think there's a lot of confusion now between the notion of freedom and license. I think this is the problem with European society nowadays, that it has embraced a notion of freedom which isn't freedom, but is a notion of license. In other words, it's a supermarket of values where you pick and choose what you like according to what gratifies you.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, in a sense, and I want to raise this with Dov, we in Israel, we sort of have a little bit of an advantage because we have a very strong sense of identity here in Israel. And even though when a progressive identity has been imposed upon the population, and I think we in Israel have had a progressive agenda imposed upon us. I think you would probably agree with that, especially subsequent to what is known as the Oslo process, where there was an attempt to abrogate any sense of Jewish identity and any notion of Israel as being a Jewish state, and to introduce a notion of Israel as a state simply of all its citizens without a historical religious identity, which has patently failed because we see a great resurgence in national religious identity. So to an extent, Israel has a little bit of an advantage, but we did go through this phase, especially with Oslo. Oslo was a sort of a conduit for all the progressive lunacy which is now infecting Europe. In Israel, let's say the immune system is pretty strong. What do you think, Dov?
Yeah, as you say, we wanted to be part of this game, and I believe this progressive game is a good thing. I mean, it's good to have more fluid identity, as you say, and not to be completely psycho-rigid. It's good to be all that. It's good things. Even religiously, it's a very good way to be close to God, to be broken, and not to be a lot of certitude. And you have a doubt is also something that you can help you to be closer to God and to have some humility and humbleness. And it's also a good thing, and to open yourself to all the other. But as you, I think we have met in Israel with with the limits of that because of the population around, because of the population around don't play the game. So in Europe, if it was not with immigration, I think could have worked. We can have a transformation toward a new Europe with less domination. I want first something we didn't talk so much about as today. It's about the good point of all the John Lennon thing. We don't want domination. We want to be. We like that people will open their heart. We like to be nice to the people and not to use force and not to impose things to the other. So it's something that we like inside the family. It's what we do. We don't want anymore to have a kind of power. We want to get rid of power. But when we look outside, you cannot get rid of power. So what happened in Israel? We try to be there. And the big price we have, the price of all these things that we go to be only individuals and to be with no clear value, and we lose the civil society. We lose the common belonging and meaning, and people are lost. They don't know who they are. They don't know how they belong to the past and to the future. So it's a very big problem. And what happened on October 7th, I just mentioned that because you have to be aware that what happened in Israel, it's also maybe a promo of something that could happen even in Europe. This kind of pogrom and violence from outside of the suburbs in France going to the central city against the local old French people. It's something we have to be aware of that. What happened is the state fails in Israel, the government fails, the army fails, but the civil society was strong. And this is very important. So everything happened that people from the civil society, and then we discover a lot of strengths inside the society, as you mentioned, Garry, before. The people inside the society don't like all what the elites say. They accept it because they hear on TV and they read that in the newspaper, but they are not there. They don't want to be there. They believe in family, they believe in values, and so they want belonging and meaning. And you cannot have belonging and meaning if you don't know where you want to go, if you don't know who you are. So you have to have some strength of that. So I agree. I want to say that I think the progressive agenda is a very positive thing. Even from a religious man, I believe that is very good. Something to get rid of this power of a power, and people have to be more listening to their own voice inside themselves and to accept the other. But on the other side, we cannot make it too. We have to be very careful when we go to that. We have to be careful, and it could have worked in Europe too if it was not immigration. It could have worked. And we can achieve at the end of the day, it will be maybe too much no identity, fluid identity, and then we go back to more. Some people say, okay, we have to decide, and we believe that family is a good thing. And family is a good thing. You need to have children, you have to educate, you have to have some order and law, and it's important to do that, but maybe a new way. It could be a revolution, but it's necessary anyway. So, but so what happened in Israel, as you said, Marco, what happened in Israel, we have experienced all that very fast, and we find it back because we try to trust the people around. We try to open the borders. We have to try to enjoy the way, to be nice to the people around, and it didn't work. So when it doesn't work, we have to go back. So we have a backlash. We have a backlash to identity, and now we need a stronger society. So it's maybe, I believe it will happen also in Europe. What I believe in Europe today is that we are going to have a lot of people who will not accept. It doesn't work. Let's say that the ethos of John Lennon failed. It didn't work. It doesn't provide belonging and meaning to the people. People are very alone. People they believe that sexual revolution will be so nice to them. At the end of the day, we have so many people who are alone. They are fully alone. And so they say, at least in a family, you have some support. You have a larger family. You have children to take care of the old people. Today, the people are fully alone. So what do you like of that? I mean, at the end of the day, you feel free when you are young and strong and beautiful, but at the end of the day, to the society, it's very bad. We need social bonds. You mentioned Durkheim. We need social bonds. We need civil society. We thought, what makes you happy? And when you have social bonds, when you have friends, when you have people supporting you. And so we have to build again all that has been destroyed. But some people, as you say, who don't need that because they have a lot of overweight. And we are, at the end of the day, what happened? We are kind of consumers, and we cannot work this way. To be consumers.
Estás a ouvir, Vitor?
Indeed, you mentioned something very interesting because I think we should point out as well that Israel has the highest birth rate in the advanced world, in the Western world. It has the highest birth rate, something that Europe doesn't have. Let's say the long-standing indigenous population has a very low birth rate in most countries. And in the face of immigration from hostile countries, let's say, that is a very big problem. People have, and I think we can link it to what we said before, that people who have a sense of a project, of a future, tend to have children. In Europe became a bit of a gratification society. You know, people very often weren't thinking about, certainly when I was growing up, people weren't thinking about having families. They were thinking about having a good night out. That was the personal project. Craig.
Well, it's been pushed by feminism too, hasn't it? You know, I mean, one of the big messages of feminism was that you don't need to have a family. You need to have a career. You need to be a girl boss, you know, and you can have a sexually promiscuous life just like men. You know, simply go to bed with anyone you want to, and when you get tired of them, find somebody else. And you don't need to be tied to having children and cooking and cleaning and so on. And so, I mean, I think that's been a kind of, in some ways, a disastrous message for women as well as for men, because women have not done very, very well. Most women are not very happy. Most women are more likely to have mental illness than men. You know, this hasn't worked out very well for them. But yeah, that is a big problem, and I think that you know, something else we haven't talked about really is that a lot of people in the elite have been in favor of immigration precisely because of this. They say that we can't have continued economic growth without keeping up the population. The only way to do that is to bring in immigrants. I mean, you can see that there's a certain amount of truth in that. The problem is that we're bringing in so many immigrants so fast that there's no chance for them to integrate. And the other problem is that most of the immigrants we're bringing in are not a net benefit to the society. I mean, certainly in England, I can tell you that most of our immigrants end up costing more to the taxpayer than they end up contributing. And you know, I read recently, for example, I think of the Pakistani origin immigrants, it's certainly more than 70% of the women are on benefits. I think it's something like 78% of those women are on benefits, even though all of their husbands work, you know, but their husbands mostly work. They're mainly taxi drivers and things like that, and it's a cash economy, and they're not really contributing almost anything in taxes. So you know, when you hear left-wing economists talking about this, it often seems it often seems to make sense, but in fact, when you look at how it actually works it out, it doesn't necessarily benefit the society at all.
No. I think immigration is a very tricky thing. One has to be selective about who one lets in, and also the pace of immigration. Immigration can be a positive thing, of course, but when a country is inundated with millions of new immigrants in a very short space of time, the metabolism can only absorb a certain amount of immigrants at a certain pace. I think that's abundantly clear. Yeah.
So I want to introduce Luis.
Hello, everybody. I don't know if you can.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you now. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Not hearing.
We can hear you well.
He needs to get his radio off in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear us now? Luis, maybe.
I think you need to mute him at this stage because yeah, until he gets that technical aspect sorted out. I just wanted to draw I wanted to draw people's attention to another aspect of the turbulence in Europe now, because we see a lot of these different streams of immigrants, of these various groups of people who are actively trying to subvert European society. They are all coalescing around the Palestinist flag. At every meeting, we see these flags. So I think it is reasonable to assume that it's not just a matter of a weakening of the immune system of Europe. I think there are people also pushing an agenda. I think this is also something that we have to entertain this possibility that there are people, foreign actors, NGOs, foreign states that are actually doing their utmost to cause chaos within European and Western societies. And I think we can cite some examples. A state which we all know is a state sponsor of terrorism, Qatar. Qatar is one of the most prominent now, but in the past we've certainly had Saudi Arabia, many Arab states sponsoring Palestinism, around which all the renegade elements within European society are now coalescing. What are your thoughts on that? It's a rallying point for all those elements that are hostile to European society and which ultimately want to see European society collapse.
So first, I will tell a few things about that because I wrote a lot about that. So first, we have to understand that Putin and China and Iran and other countries like that, they don't have so much empathy for the Palestinian children. You know, Putin has not so much empathy for much of the problem of the Palestinian people. What he wants to do is to destabilize Europe. He wants to destabilize Europe, and how he wants to destabilize the European Union. He wants to European weak. He wants a weak Europe. He wants to have a Europe, and they want to attack the liberal order. So they made a kind of alliance with the leftist people, with the Islam, and not because they have so much empathy for them, but because they understand these people. So what we know from already, we have a lot of evidence of that. And we have a report from the French Senate of 400 pages showing how Putin and Qatar as supporting the far right and the far left in order to make the liberal order weak. So they support the far right and they support the far left, and sometimes they, like Iran, they also support the Islamism. So what they want is to make the liberal order very weak. And so that's the reason they go for that. I know that from as a Jew and I'm very aware of anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is something which is bringing people together, as we know from history. So when we have to have something together, it's to hate the Jews. It's a good idea to bring all these people together. So we know that the liberal order, the Jews need the liberal order because as a minority, without liberal order, nobody is going to protect them. But we know that there are some people who are not state sponsors of that, and we do it with even China and Putin and Iran. It's very clear, and we have also some terror attacks, terror group like Hamas in Europe, where we want to make the Europe very, very weak. And we have also people who, and so this is very, we have to be aware of a lot of alliance we bring together. It's because these people hate the liberal order. Some people because they want to destroy the liberal order because they hate themselves and they hate Europe. They want to destroy Europe, and other people they want to destroy Europe from outside because they want, when you are Putin and you like to have Europe which is weak, and even when you are Donald Trump, you want to have Europe weak. So it's a matter of geopolitics. Regular geopolitics is not a matter of values. So what Europe has to understand, if they want to go out of that, they have to think again and what is their own agenda, what they want to be, what they have in common altogether. And they have something historic for 2,000 years of history. So we have to bring all that together. And we said that before. And I think it's really, there is a need at the individual level and at collective level. At the individual level, people understand they are very alone. They have no families and all that what we said before. And when we look at who has founding all this liberal progressive movement, we find out, as you say, a lot of money come from Qatar. Qatar is the founder of Islamism in Europe. It's also the founder of Hamas. It's also the founder of liberalism, progressivism in American university. So we know what these people want. They want the Europe to be weak, and they want the liberal order to be weak. So we have to be aware of that, and we have to follow the money and to check out who is doing what and what the people gain from that. And it can be changed. It's not complicated to know how the money come to university, how the money come to these different parties, extreme radical parties who want to destroy the liberal order.
Vitor?
Yeah, I think I'm going to welcome Luís now. Can you hear us, Luís, now?
Yes, I can. I can
Good.
hear you
So,
loud and clear.
Thanks for joining the discussion. And
I'm sorry.
I understand that technical issues. We can all deal with that, even if we're not in the mood. That's just something that we need to live with. So, Luís, we're just discussing here how Qatar and Saudi and the UAE are poisoning the Western society with some bad message. And the way they do it is by pouring money into universities and institutions. I'm sure you are familiar with the topic, and you have seen how negative it has been to the Western society as such. So I don't know if you are still able to hear us or not, because and would like to get your thoughts on this when you are ready.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Well, my thoughts on that it's that it is not only a matter of money. I think there is much more than money behind that. Money is money did not create that fire. Money is something that feeds the fire, but it does not create it. And obviously, it's very difficult to go back to the beginning of the fire, to use this analogy. But obviously, that money, yes, it's feeding the problem, and I really don't know stop it, how to go back, or to other than what we are doing. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you touched on a point that I've been thinking for the last 2-3 days. It's like it seems that our message it has to go through different channels that are not the main ones, because maybe it's not as attractive as it should be to the youth. But if we think of how much successful are the likes of Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray, for instance, who are now bestsellers, and actually Douglas Murray was signing books in one of the biggest bookshops in London. So I think that gives signs of hope, that I think even the youngsters are now fed up with the stuff they have been bombarded with, and maybe there is a new avenue for us to explore. I think that gives us some optimism.
Yes, there is some signs of hope, and still yesterday I had a sign. One of my crew is a young American, 22 or 23 years old American who studied journalism, and she entirely agrees with my views and about the poison that American universities are becoming, or became already. And she's 23 years old or something like that, probably around that. So yes, I still believe in my theory of the pendulum, and I think the pendulum will go back. I'm quite optimistic. Obviously, I think the pendulum will need some help to go back, but I'm quite optimistic about the new generation. I think there was a big problem with history, and I am 67 years old, so for everybody. And I think that a big part of the fault relies on my generation, and our generation, my generation, is the one that is to blame for all this, sorry the word, but all this shit that's happening around. Because even recently I was in Geneva, and the rector of the manager of the university, I don't know the term in English, but in Portuguese we say reitor of the university, was a guy my age, about to some kind of stupid requirements from the students about the name of something. And the guy was 67 years old. It was not a student. It was someone my age. And I think that my generation, which began when I was 18 years old, fighting to make everybody a person and not a black, a white, a woman, a gay, a transgender, whatever. We are the ones who are abiding to these new things of separating people into races and religions and whatever. And it's difficult. But again, I think that the youngest generation, the one that is now 20 and something, are starting to see that things cannot go on like that. It's just stupid.
Garry, I want to turn to you, because you probably have observed from a similar point of view as Luís, given you are in the same age group. Have you also came across of this trajectory?
Are you speaking to me, Vitor?
Yes.
Yes, I agree. One thing I'm not sure I agree with Luís on is this about the new generation. I mean, there's a huge split between boys and girls of that age, actually. I mean, most of the young men are quite traditional and conservative, but almost all of the young women are very liberal, actually. I mean, there's lots of evidence for this. And you know, obviously Luís has this experience with a young woman. I'm aware that there are young women who can think for themselves, but you know, most of the women are particularly brainwashed. I think.
Yes, Vitor.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Why do you think, Garry? Why do you think there is this split between men and women when it comes to the acceptance of the view that has been promoted? My guess would be that maybe women buy the idea that we are doing them a favor by promoting another society, and and we are not, because we all know that at the end of the road it won't be that pleasant, but on the short term it looks great. So are they thinking just short term? Is that the reason why they buy this model?
Yeah, I think it has to do with feminist ideology. That you can probably agree with me. I think that there's been what amounts to a war on boys and men over the last 20 years. It's quite overt, actually, that boys are constantly being told that they're a problem. That masculinity is toxic. We hear this toxic masculinity all of the time now, and that girls are better at everything. Girls are better organized, they're more disciplined, they have better communication skills. Just so many things in popular culture. The girls have been praised and told that they can do anything, and the boys all the time are being told to behave more like girls. And so, a lot of young men have rejected this.
I think we could define this as sort of a psychological castration.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think the thing, and this also, I believe, is a key. I think this is also. I think we have a key to understand why a proper response very often isn't forthcoming from men. An incapacity for decisive action, which in a certain sense characterizes our understanding of manhood, and an incapacity to deal with situations which need a sharp response as well. Dithering, for example, look if we look at the example of the problems that we have in Europe with terrorism. There's an incapacity to take decisive actions. It becomes undemocratic. The capacity to be decisive in a way is to be decisive is conflated with being dictatorial.
Yes.
An emergency situation requires different responses. We can take the example of Britain during wartime. People could not demonstrate, could not cause havoc. People like Oswald Mosley were basically interned for the duration of the war. At least they were isolated. Their movements were constrained. And it's particularly clear when there is a threat that I'm linking it to what you say about the men and manhood being attacked, and this psychological castration is synonymous with an incapacity to take decisive action in emergency situations when the situation is really disastrous. And I think we can think of a few examples in Europe. Excuse me. We see hundreds of churches which have been the subject to arson attacks in Europe. And we see all types of excuses being found for the perpetrators of these acts. They're being excused. For example, they have suffered from a mental illness or this, that, or the other. There's an incapacity to face reality, which I believe there is a link with the capacity that manhood has been attacked. The capacity for a virile and firm response has been compromised by what you have underlined. Dov?
Marco, just to stay on that topic,
Yeah.
I'll be interested in hearing Luís' thoughts. So Luís, for
Okay,
people who don't know, he spends a lot of time on the sea. And I think when you are in the middle of the sea, there is no time for BS. You need to get things done. There's no such thing as, we need to get a transgender just to bring us back to land. Otherwise, we better sink.
Yes.
How do you approach this kind of
I have a multi-level response to that, but I'm just going to start by asking you, is it possible to lower the volume on your side? Because I am on an office and I hope I am boring the people here in the office. So if you can lower the little bit of the oven. Okay. I don't have, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I have different a multi-level. As a seaman, as a sailor, I don't give a damn who the other person on the person that is on the other side of the line being a rope for us. The person that is on the other side of the rope is. I just want him to be competent. I don't mind. I don't give a damn if he's communist, Muslim, woman, transgender, whatever. I need him to be competent because my life is on this side of the rope, of the line, and I want him. So we as a sailor have an attitude towards people that we don't mind who the person is outside. We only care what the person is inside. And this attitude, for instance, goes to hierarchy. We don't accept hierarchies except the hierarchy of knowledge. It's the only hierarchy that a sailor accepts is if you know more than me, I receive orders from you. If you do not know as much as me, I do things the way I want and I dodge your orders. So this is first point. The second point, I go back one step once again. The point is that there is our society, our civilization is getting more and more feminine. There is a feminization of our society in everything. If we compare our society today, our civilization today, with what our civilization was 200 years ago, we are much more feminine. And while at sea, or when I have a crew like today, I say my authority is my authority because I know more than you, not because I am a man, not because I am white, not because I am whatever you want to call me, but my authority is my authority because I know more than you. This speech is accepted normally by younger people. When I have people that are close to the 40 or 50, it's more difficult for them to accept this. It's not, they accept it in the end, but they do not accept it as easily as the younger people. So here there is again a matter of age, of generation, and this feminization of the society did not, going one step back, this feminization of the society did not begin today. We could say that it started with Jesus, that's when the gods became female, because gods, until Catholicism, gods were males. They were bad to you. They would punish you. They would do things, and then the gods became good, willing persons. So the feminization of our society comes from a long, long time ago. It does not come from today. Today there is a how do you say, a goodization. It's becoming a little bit more. But again, I think that there is a problem with the manhood. So I remember when on my teens I read Simone de Beauvoir, and she said that you are not born a woman, you become a woman, which was obviously a total stupidity, but that was accepted 50 or 60 years ago. It was accepted as an absolute truth, being a woman. Which brings me to another point. It's the fight. There is a permanent fight between biology and culture. And we are on a point of history, in my view, that culture is winning that fight. But biology will come back because biology is very strong. There is no culture strong enough to fight biology. And in the end, everything goes back to cells and exchange of fluids. And there is no way of going against that. I mean, there's no way the culture can go and make a... So this is for me, this is a multi-level problem. Obviously, I am a sailor. I am an optimistic. I mean, there's a characteristic. You cannot be a sailor if you are not optimistic. Otherwise, you would not go to sea. But I am optimistic, and I think that things will go back. The problem is that what we have to think is that what we are living today did not start today. Started a long time ago. It's getting a little bit worse, let us say, for lack of a better word, because of the spread of culture. It's getting authority is a bad word now. Authority is a bad there's, if you say that I am authoritarian, but there are places where you need to be authoritarian. Authority has a bad reputation now. So all these things will come back slowly. Some things will not come back. I mean, I don't see the feminization of our society stopping tomorrow. I don't think so. But well, we have a feminist called Camille Paglia. Camille Paglia will change feminism later, because Camille Paglia is introducing some biology on this speech. So that is the way I have to handle it. I mean, is handle it at multi-level places, on a historic and civilization perspective, and hope for the best. That's more or less the way I see the thing. I'm sorry if I'm being too long, but that's the way I see it.
You were late, so you need to compensate for the time you were not with us. So we allow you 1 or 2 minutes extra just because you joined us a bit late. Dov, you've been quiet for a while, and I'm sure you have something to say on this feminization of society and the danger that comes with it.
I've learned a lot because you made me so good things, Luís, about what you say. So there is a tension between culture and nature. Culture and nature. And what we believe is we go more for culture, and we need less physical force today, so we can have more. When you are in front of a computer, it doesn't matter if you are a man or a woman. It's less gender dependent. So it's not biological dependent. It's about how you feel. And there's a good things about all feminism. I don't want just to defend it, but I just want to say that it's as I said before, it's a pendulum. We have been too much authoritarian on the bad side. Today we have to go, Luís, on the real authority. Authority to the children today is not based on violence, on power. It's based on knowledge and real capacity to help the people and to bring the people some benefit, to help the people to be themselves and so on. So I think all this process is a very positive process. But we have gone too far. We have gone too far because after the Second World War, we wanted to get rid of nationalism, of ethnicity and religion, because all that have been very bad things with religion and all that. And so we go, but at some point people put the baby with the water and away. And when we have to go back, because family is very important thing, and values is very important, and the fidelity is very important. We have to strong families make you feeling of belonging and meaning. So I believe that we are going to go back at some point. I'm afraid of how we go, what is going to happen until we get there. But I have no doubt. But the young people understand now. And so many people are converting to Islam. You know what they like in Islam? It's what we call the virility. What we call that, this masculinity. They want to have a real man. They want to have a real man. They don't want anymore a man which is not really a man. And so on. So we have a backlash. And I believe this backlash is going to, and we may see very soon in Europe, to see the churches go back to be open, and people want to be religious. People want families. And maybe it will be a very good blessing to have all this femininity, which has been maybe too much, but in some way it was also something which is good, to get rid of the bad side of the power and to bring the good side of that. By the way, I have to leave you because I have to bring my daughter to birth to the hospital. So I'm leaving you now. And so thanks God we have big families in Israel, and we believe in children. When you don't believe in the future, you don't believe in children. When you believe in children, because we believe that's why life is worth being lived. And we want to have families, we want to have children. And I invite you to visit Israel and to see how the people can make democracy and values together and all that. So I'm leaving you. I'm taking my daughter to the hospital.
Which hospital? Which hospital? Which hospital? Shaare Zedek. That's where my son was born.
Oh, good. Very good.
I hope it's not serious. I hope it's nothing serious. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for being so late, but
she's
well,
good. She has to give birth. That's absolutely okay.
thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Oh,
Cheers. Bye.
take care.
Yes, just going on with this theme that there is obviously we will go back, and every route does not go exactly to the same place. It moves a little bit to one sense of the other, and I strongly believe in this thing of this idea of the pendulum. But it's true that we cannot just let go. We have to help the pendulum move. That is, inaction is not the right response. Just waiting is not the right response. That is for sure.
Yeah, I believe that the nature heals itself, and of course that doesn't justify us to remain passive. We can somehow ensure that the damage is not as bad by being proactive, but at some point the nature will find a way to find their own way to heal. So another thing is sometimes we need to hit the bottom to go up again, and it sounds like a cliche, but as Dov was saying, sometimes like we need to be hit to wake up, and maybe that's what have happened in the last couple of decades.
Sorry, just let me go. I did not hear entirely what all you said because there's a little bit background noise, but just one thing that we cannot forget, again, going back to our generation, and that to mea culpa, mea maxima culpa of our generation, that should be done soon, I hope so, is the problem of teaching, the educational system. I am absolutely appalled when it happens to me very often to get this young crew, and I'm absolutely appalled by their ignorance of history and their strong belief that what we are living today is the absolute truth. Even yesterday, I was having we are three writers per coincidence now. My two crew and myself, we are both three writers, and both of them did not know that the connotation of the word nigger in the 19th century was different from the connotation of that word today. And they did not know it because nobody taught them. Nobody taught them about the evolution of connotation. So our generation was the responsible for that education of these kids. Learn on a relativism. We went into a relativism because of what I'm sorry, I don't know his name, was saying that the Second World War and the problems of absolutism and ideologies and everything, and because of all that we went into a relativism, and that relativism brought us to teach our kids things that, or rather not to teach our kids things that they should know and that should be perfect knowledge. And one of those knowledge is that most of the things that we think today are just culture of today. It's not a permanent culture, and this is not taught at schools. And I think this is one of the problems, that one of the things that has to change is that, like authority in schools, teachers have no authority anymore, and this kind of stuff. I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize all your time, but
No, you're absolutely spot on. Like my sister is a teacher herself, and she has been on the field for maybe 20 years, and she keeps saying that she has a hell of a time to be seen as the person in command. Like the whole thing now is on the students. They, especially with technology, that they start messaging each other, and there is no real order. And if she wants to stand up and try to impose some discipline, they just go mad. And I know, Garry, you were a teacher and up to like 2018 or something like that, and I don't know what you have observed in the last few years. Did you also feel that things were going in that direction?
Well, I was a bit authoritarian. I didn't allow any cell phones in my classes, and ever. So because you can't teach if they're using their cell phones, they will immediately start playing games and messaging each other, and you lose control completely. I mean, I think there's a little bit of an advantage being a male teacher. I think students tend to, even though a lot of them have a bad view of the paternalistic and patriarchal teacher, that they tend to be a little bit more respectful of male teachers. I know this because in the same department there were women professors who said that they had problems, and I never had any problems. If students would start talking, I would just immediately say, just a minute, I'm talking or something. And if they continued, I'd say, I want to see you after the class. And I'd say, this isn't going to happen again, But so, I think, again, part of the problem of the feminization that Marco was talking about is that women in general don't like conflict, and they will do anything to avoid conflict. Men are a bit more willing to be confrontational when it's necessary. I'm not a violent man or anything. I mean, I didn't ever need to be violent. I never shouted at students or anything like that. But I personally didn't have a lot of problems. But I was teaching in a university, not in a school, and I think teaching teenagers is different. My son James. James is quite a tough guy, and he's had problems with teenagers teaching them English. So yeah.
I actually invited James to join this session, but he couldn't make it. Yeah, so maybe in the future occasions he can share some of his experiences with students, and he can give some hints to my sister. But I think maybe the best solution for my sister is to identify as a man. Maybe that's one thing we can do.
Yeah, maybe.
Problem solved.
The point is that
you need to identify as a white male, not just to make it more scary.
What we tend to forget, and I think it's very important, is that kids like discipline. Kids need discipline, and we tend to forget that. We tend to say, "Oh, we are all peace and love and everything," and it's not true. They need borders, they need definition, they need limits, which is exactly the same as being a captain on a ship. Crew, they want authority. And very often our generation tends to forget this, because we grew up thinking that authority was bad, and authority led to Auschwitz, and that authority led to war, and that authority led to this and to that. And it's not true. It's just a matter of degree of authority. The authority in itself is good, has good things, but we tend to forget. And another problem that happened after the war is that the families, the matter of educating kids was passed from families to schools. The function of schools was not only anymore teaching, but it became also a function. They start having a role of educating also, which is different. One thing is educating, and the other thing is teaching. And the families, for very different reasons, families starting, how do you say, tertiarizing, outsourcing the matter of education to schools. And obviously, that is a point that I live in favor of teachers. The teachers were not prepared for that. That is something that we have to live with that.
We need to leave we need to finish the conversation now, because it's now above 90 minutes. We have this 90-minute rule, but we allow a couple of minutes more, given you were a bit late, Luís, but hopefully next time you can join from the beginning, and we can follow the whole discussion. So I want to thank you guys to be with us this evening, Garry and Luís. It has been a pleasure as always. I think you provided insights that are very beneficial. I think they were attractive for the kind of crowd that usually listen to us every Wednesday. I think discipline is sexy, so I think our ideas will resonate with people, and we are observing I think an increase when it comes to the engagement between new generations and so-called old-fashioned ideas. So hopefully this can be reflected in society. Now, it won't be overnight. Maybe that's something that we need to give it a decade, or maybe a bit less, maybe 5 years. But slowly but surely, I think we are on the good direction. I just pointed out what happened in the UK Supreme Court today. Douglas Murray signing books at a major bookshop in London, and hopefully we can replicate the good signs that Britain is providing Europe on the road. So I want to leave with that positive note. Anything you want to add, Marco?
No, that's fine. You wrapped it up nicely.
So yeah, so if you guys enjoyed this conversation, there are 3 buttons below: like, share, and subscribe. So we'll be very thankful if you can press those 3, because that's how this content gets distributed in YouTube. So we'll be back. We'll be back on Sunday, Marco. No, we have something for Sunday. Yeah,
that's
we
right.
have something for Sunday. We're going to discuss another controversial topic, but for sure of interest for those who think by themselves. So I'm going to wish everyone a good evening, and see you very soon.
Thank you very much. Bye bye, everybody. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.